I'm not backing down. That's what a defiant Nouri Al Maliki had to say after the US objected to his return as Iraq's Prime Minister. Washington set a Friday deadline for him to pull out. But what if he doesn't? And what would the implications be for Iraq? This is Inside Story. Hello again, I'm James Bays. Iraq is in political deadlock. It still has no government, though general elections were held in November. At the heart of the crisis is the former Prime Minister Nouri Al Maliki, who was picked by the majority coalition in Parliament as its candidate to take over the role again. But that choice has been met with strong opposition from the US President Donald Trump, and that warning has further polarised the political landscape in the country. So, what's really behind Washington's strong stance against Maliki, and what role does the US still play in Iraq? We'll discuss the outcome of this standoff with our panel of guests in a moment. But first, this report from Imogen Kimber.
Nouri Al Maliki is looking to return to power. He's standing to be the next Prime Minister of Iraq, despite pressure from the US not to.
I have absolutely no intention of withdrawing out of respect for my country, its sovereignty and its will. No one has the right to say whom we can or cannot vote for.
Parliament's majority bloc, a Shia coalition called the Coordination Framework, is putting Maliki forward as its candidate, although not by complete consensus, as some see him as a divisive figure. In 2006, the bloc picked Maliki to be Iraq's first Prime Minister after the US invasion forced Saddam Hussein from power. But in January, US President Donald Trump said Washington would no longer help Iraq if Maliki returned to office.
This blatant interference, his rejection of the Iraqi people's choices, and his attempt to suppress the voice of the Iraqi voters are completely unacceptable. We want to tell him that enough is enough, and we will not allow him to interfere in our choices again.
Trump said last time Maliki was in power, Iraq descended into poverty and total chaos. During Maliki's tenure, sectarian violence flared, corruption was rampant, and ISIL took control of great swathes of the country, which led him to step down in 2014. Maliki also has a close relationship with Tehran, as Trump threatens Iran with war. And under the former PM, pro-Iranian militias gained influence in Iraq. Maliki says, in the case of war between the US and Iran, not only Iraq would be affected.
One consequence is if the Strait of Hormuz were closed, the entire region would be in a very difficult situation. All oil sources and export routes are at that strait, meaning that oil would stop and the price would rise. Countries' oil revenues would come to a halt. Secondly, there might also be involvement in wars.
As well as selling oil to the US, Iraq has a number of business deals with US companies, including the one recently signed with Chevron. The deal was overseen by US Special Envoy to Syria, Tom Barak, and the current Iraqi Prime Minister, Mohammed Shia al-Sudani. Sudani is seen as having more balanced relations with Tehran and Washington. Trump has given Baghdad a deadline of Friday, February 27th to stop Maliki's nomination, making it clear that Iraq is nowhere near free from Washington's attempts to influence its politics. Imogen Kimber, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Well, Iraqi politics are very complicated, but we have the right guests to make sense of all of this on Inside Story today. And here with me in the studio in Doha, Muhanad Seloom. He is Assistant Professor of International Politics at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. From the Iraqi capital, Baghdad, we have Ahmed Rushdi. He's President of the House of Iraqi Expertise Foundation and a former foreign policy advisor in the Iraqi Parliament. And in Miami, Florida, we're joined by Kenneth Katzman. He is a senior fellow at the Soufan Center. Thank you, all three of you, for joining us on Inside Story. So, Muhanad, we have a slow-moving political crisis because the elections were back in November. The Shiite Coordination Framework, that's the umbrella grouping of all the Shia party, they met, and then just over a month ago, they chose Maliki to be their nominee to be the Prime Minister. that in itself, before President Trump will come to him, before he got involved, that was controversial already, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, Maliki is a controversial figure in Iraq for so many reasons. One of them is that he already has his fair share of leading Iraq for 2 terms. And the second term was not really very good for Iraq, neither for the region or the international arena. I mean, by the end of his tenureship as a prime minister, ISIS rose to power, taking 1/3 of Iraq, threatening not only Iraq, Syria, and the rest of the world. So I think what we're looking at here is a very controversial figure who has been playing politics in Iraq way before 2003, because he's one of the few figures in Iraq who actually been in politics for a very long time, since the 1970s. And now he is in power yet again, promoted by the coordination framework, the major or the main Shia political, if you like, umbrella in Iraq. And Iraqis have voiced their concerns about this nomination, including key Sunni figures in Iraq and also some Kurdish figures in Iraq. So Maliki is already controversial inside Iraq, let alone by figures like President Trump or even other states in Europe or in the region.
So, Ahmed, in Baghdad, we have a former prime minister who was in charge of Iraq at the time of its worst internal violence. He was the leader of Iraq when ISIL rose up and seized part of the state. Were these things because of his policies and actions in part, or did he just happen to be the leader of Iraq in its darkest days?
Well, James, I think you forgot something very important. He's also the strongest leader inside the ITAR, the coalition of the Shia. So it shows you that he actually grabbed the nomination from the ITAR themselves and put himself as a candidate, as a prime minister. At the same time, the others, the great 5 others are against him, except Hadi al-Amni is now with him. So what he did actually is one of the strongest attempts in politics in Iraq, is that he already has opponent inside his coalition, and also he's the first politician after a day of elections went to Erbil, said that I am the nominator, the new nominator for the prime minister, starting from the second day of elections. So it shows you that this person is working hard to show himself as he should be the leader of Iraq, he should be the prime minister of Iraq. But at the same time, who is supporting Maliki is a very important issue. Starting from the militia, starting from the Fasal, who already now has already get MPs inside the parliament, show you that he can work with them inside the parliament to stop any formation of the government without his acceptance. This is first. And secondly, he has the support of Iran. So it shows you that this person is not an easy way to treat with. He will not step down until he will go to the edge and said, okay, guys, if you don't want me, I have my substitution.
Kenneth, let's just go back and put a little bit of historical context in this. 2003 was the US invasion of Iraq, the bombing of Baghdad. I was there at the time. And then a couple of years later, the first elections, 2005. Maliki, a somewhat obscure grey figure at the time. And the US had quite a role, did they not, in choosing him and picking him. They soon regretted that, did they not?
Thank you, James. Thank you for having me. Oh, yes, the U.S. very much regretted Maliki. And you were asking, how did Maliki do when he was prime minister? Let's not forget, Mr. Obama basically pushed him out in 2014. There was an election, and he had already served 2 terms. ISIS was in control of 40% of Iraq in 2014 when the parliament was choosing a new whether to keep Maliki or substitute. And Mr. Obama basically, as Mr. Trump is doing now, insisted we cannot work with Maliki. He needs to leave. And he was dumped. And now he's back. And obviously we see the controversy. So yeah, he's sectarian, very much anti-Sunni, Arab. He's repressed the Sunnis, which drove them to support ISIS. Very, very negative character. I think we'll talk about it later in the show, but obviously when the U.S. said we can't accept him again now is an issue we could discuss. But his reputation in Washington, I'm not in Washington right now, I'm in Miami, but I'll be back there soon, very negative. The United States cannot work with him. So he's either going to have to leave or he's going to be there as prime minister again, and he'll be by himself. He will have no friends in Washington.
Well, that's pretty clear, Kenneth, from what President Trump said days after he was nominated. He went on his own social media platform, Truth Social. Let me put up the tweet. I don't think we call them tweets. Truth, I think they call them. Last time Maliki was in power, the country descended into poverty and total chaos. That should not be allowed to happen again. Because of his insane policies and ideologies, if elected, the United States of America will no longer help Iraq. And if we're not there to help Iraq, it has zero chance of success, prosperity, or freedom. Muhanad, that message from Trump must have sent a shockwave, even though it was a controversial time, and you'd already told us people were questioning Maliki's nomination. What was the feeling of Iraqis when they saw that?
Well, I think Iraqis looked at this, that, the U.S., this is the first time the U.S. is very clear, sending a very clear message, setting a very clear line, that Maliki should not come back to power. But I want to highlight something here, that the U.S. problem with Maliki is not ideological. It's empirical. I mean, they saw the last time what happened to Iraq when Maliki was in power. And so I think what the U.S. is trying to say is that we don't want more troubles for Iraq, and that we had to intervene yet again in Iraq 20 years after the invasion. And I think what is going on now in Iraq, this crisis of the government formation, it is a symptom more than anything else. I mean, does Iraq have the institutions to build the government, to talk to the international community, or is it really about strong men negotiating each other to who's going to be in power? Because we know that Maliki nomination did not come out of a vacuum. Mohammed Shia al-Sudani, the former prime minister, said that I support Maliki. The other candidates, they said that we support Maliki. So Maliki has his own power inside Iraq. He's very close to militias. Iran also played a role, not in supporting him. Iran does not support people directly or nominees. What Iran does is permits them to go and be in the front line. And this is what happened with Maliki. So what we are looking at here is a direct U.S. intervention in Iraqi politics, in the Iraqi democratic process. At the same time, they are doing this this is at least the declared objective, to have a better and more stable Iraq.
Kenneth, you know how Washington works, or how Washington normally works, but of course it's a little bit different now under the Trump administration, because another thing happened at the same time as Trump put out this tweet. The US did have a special envoy for Iraq, a gentleman called Mark Savaya. He was fired from his job. And then, as we've seen a lot in Trump world, he relies on those people he's known from his past life and gives them numerous jobs. He's turned to Ambassador Tom Barak, a real estate mogul, who is technically his ambassador to Turkey. Then he was made the special envoy for Syria. Now he's been given the Iraq job as well. I mean, that says something, does it not, that Trump is sending in his man?
Well, it does. I want to also, Maliki's bloc, his state of law, did not win the most votes in the election. So I want to be clear. He has the support of various armed groups and political leaders, Shia leaders. He did not win the election. Soudani's bloc, the Reconstruction bloc, won the election.
And Soudani, just to make it clear to our viewers, Soudani is the incumbent prime minister. And most people had thought an Iraqi prime minister after Maliki would never get a second term. But Soudani sits in the wings right now.
Now, Soudani's bloc got many more votes. I think State of Law finished third. The State of Law finished behind even a Sunnah bloc, I believe. So Maliki's claim is based on all groups and maybe some support from Tehran, which is very weak and about to potentially be made even weaker by Mr. Trump. But you asked me about Tom Barrack. Yes, Sabaya was weak. He, didn't intervene, didn't let Maliki be named by the coordination framework, didn't make Washington's position clear. And now Sabaya has been moved aside, and Mr. Trump has made his position much more clear on Maliki. Maliki is a little bit like the supreme leader in Iran. I will not back down. I will not concede. I will not make. He will. He will concede. He will back down. He will be made to back down. Mr. Trump will make him back down. He will be ousted. He will not come back.
Ahmed, I mean, in terms of what else the Americans want out of this, they clearly do not want Maliki there. But Tom Barrack apparently has issued a 7-point list of demands. Let's not worry about what's on the list. Let's worry about what the US really wants. And what do you think it is? I mean, is issue one, they want Iraq to not cozy up to Iran, to try and separate the two, particularly at this time of tension when the administration is involved in the most hardball negotiations because they've sent this military armada to the region?
Well, James, maybe one of the pleasant issues that the American demands pay attention to the Iraqis is that Americans now looking for Iraq as Iraq, not an autonomous region for the Kurds, for the Sunni, and for the Shia. And what they show with Tom Barrack in Syria and how they support the regime there to make Syria as Syria, not divided, it shows you that the Americans are willingly going forward for one Iraq, which is something very good. But let me say something very important, is that there is some sort of a mutual interest happened between Tehran and Maliki. Tehran actually support Maliki as a way to negotiate the Americans. At the same time, Maliki knows very well is that the American does not want him. Even the Shia does not want him. The Sunnis and the Kurds, the regional countries, the Gulf countries, UK, international community, even the US are actually not wanting Maliki. But the most important thing is Maliki can give you a substitute for him, which means that it will be a trend in the Iraqi politics, is that always the prime minister will be from Maliki, just like what happened with Soudani. Soudani actually nominated by Maliki, starting from the first point that he was pushed as a prime minister.
As we talk, Muhanad, about the context of the moment with the build-up, military build-up, that could be used against Iran. Iran also has called on what it calls its axis of resistance. Part of that axis of resistance is believed to be in Iraq, is believed to be militias in Iraq. Tell me a little bit about these militias and how powerful they are.
Well, they are powerful enough to be part of the parliament now. They are part of the security institution. And let's not forget that these militias were in Syria a few years back, just before the fall of Assad, and they were supporting Assad, the former Syrian president, and they were stationed there. They only came back after the fall of Assad, and now they are inside Iraq. Adding to this, that Qasem Soleimani, the IRGC commander who was assassinated by the United States a couple of years back, he was also involved in the fight against ISIS, during this time, he also cultivated many supporters inside Iraq. So Iran has a lot of influence inside Iraq, probably just as much as the US does, but in a different way. The US has influence inside Iraq through the financial systems, through the political system, and also protecting the political regime inside Baghdad, back in DC, and on the international arena. So these militias are very powerful. They have a lot of weapons. There are also reports, unconfirmed, but there are reports that the Iranians have already sent weapons to these militias in case there is a final, if you like, facing the US. There is a final war between the Iranian regime and the United States. These militias could be targeting US allies in the region and probably US troops. I mean, just by, before walking into the studio today, I hear that the US is withdrawing, its whatever remaining of its troops and diplomats in Baghdad, tonight, because, fearing what? They're not fearing the Iranians directly. Most probably they're fearing, as much the militias inside Baghdad. So these people are very powerful, and they have a lot of weapons, and they are part of they have two hats, if you like, the security hat of the government and also the militias.
Kenneth, I mean, it is worth reminding our viewers that the US still has forces that went there, invaded in 2003. Yes, most were pulled out, but the figure I saw is 2,500 US troops in Iraq. What are they there for?
Well, Mr. Obama had to send them back because Maliki, drove the Sunnah into the arms of ISIS, and ISIS captured a lot of Iraqi territory. So Mr. Obama had to send U.S. forces back to Iraq. They were all out. 2011, they all left. But Mr. Obama had to send them back to battle ISIS. So this was Maliki's problem, that he created this. That's why the U.S. troops are still there. Now, most of them, they've been moved up to the Kurdish area. I think they left, the Al-Assad base and the bases in Anbar province and other places in Iraq. They're mostly, I believe, in the Kurdish area, which is obviously the U.S. has very, very good relations with the Kurds in Iraq, always has, from time of Saddam Hussein and the invasion of Kuwait time. The early 90s, and so they're safe. They're not really threatened by these militia now, the Shia militia, the PMF, Hashd Shabi groups, and those groups are not as powerful as they used to be. They still have arms. They still have maybe some missiles. The Kataib Hezbollah, I think, has some ballistic missiles, but then they're not as powerful as they were. Some of these militia leaders have come into the government and tried to cooperate. So they're not a force the U.S. cannot handle. Believe me.
Okay,
the US can
let me bring in
forces.
Ahmed on a related point, which is ISIL. I mean, it still exists, and recently the prisoners of ISIL, a large number of them, thousands of them, were transferred from Syria to Iraq. The US is helping with that as well. How much of a challenge is that, an ongoing challenge for the Iraqi authorities, ISIL?
Well, James, it looks like it is a real threat to the Iraqi population and Iraqi communities, especially communities that have been severed from ISIL. So how you can present people who belong to ISIL, families of ISIL, and as Iraqis, not other nationalities, as Iraqis, then you relocate them into their own community who suffered from them. It's a very difficult situation on a social base, on a political base, and also on a security base. So it's not easy to manage those things. I don't know why Iraqi government accept that. Maybe because of push of them from the Americans in a way or another. But it looks like we have a lot of work to do something about them in a way or another. But let me say something very important about Maliki. The main threat locally for Maliki is not the political parties. It's not the Sunni politicians. It's not even the Kurdish politicians. It's the Sadr. The Sadr will say no for Maliki, definitely. And he will go forward, I think. He will go forward for demonstrations in the streets against Maliki, because he knows very well Maliki will be a prime minister again. There will be something else for the Sadr. And because the history tells us something very important, especially on the political behavior, is that Maliki and Sadr, they are really opponents, and there will be some sort of a clash in the streets if Maliki will be the prime minister.
You're talking about the supporters of Muqtada al-Sadr, who are sort of at the moment stepped back from the political process. Muhanad, I mean, if it isn't Maliki, is it likely to be another term for the current Prime Minister, Mohammed al-Sudani, or is there going to be another compromise candidate? What's most likely in your view?
Well, he might be, but my understanding is that Maliki has already put a veto on Mohammed Shah Sudani. He said, if I don't become Prime Minister, Mohammed Shah Sudani would not become Prime Minister, and a third person would have to be nominated. The most prominent name is the current director of Iraqi intelligence services, Hamid al-Shatri, who has been in the political process for some time. He knows the security establishment. He was the first man to see Ahmed Shara, so he played the diplomatic card, if you like. And then now he is the guy who coordinated the transfer of ISIL or ISIS prisoners from Syria to Iraq. And this was an Iraqi initiative. Iraq was not pressured by the US to receive these prisoners, just about 6,000 of them. I think Iraq, wanted these prisoners to be under its own watchful eye instead of having them in Syria and not knowing what is the future. So what we're looking at here is either Hamid al-Shatri, Mohammed Shah al-Sudani, or probably Maliki would nominate somebody else. I mean, he's been known as the kingmaker in Iraq. Earlier today, he was on a TV interview, and when he was asked, he said, people, asked about being a kingmaker. He said, people say this about me. I'm not sure I have all this power.
Okay. Let's go back to Baghdad and Ahmed. I mean, this is a country that is oil rich, and yet the people of Iraq have suffered so much. The tyranny of Saddam Hussein, a civil war, large swathe of the country taken by ISIL, and still a very fragile situation. As you see things, do you see hope on the horizon right now?
Ironically, the step on for the Americans inside Iraqi politics, I think it will give us some hope in a way or another to try to balance things inside Iraqi politics, because what we suffered since 2003 is horrible. It's not only on a security basis or social basis or even ethically. It's the problem of corruption. It's the problem of infrastructure abilities of Iraq. And Iraq, it's a rich country, so you can imagine how much people they are now suffering. Yes, they are seeing now, Maliki, a problem. Yes, it's for sure, because they are always remembering what's happened starting from 2006 until 2017, starting with the militia, with the civil war, ending with ISIL. So you can imagine the picture of Maliki is always related to something like that. And also it's related to the corruption in a way or another. But the hope is that we, as Iraqi politics try to manage things, I don't think they are really managing the way that it should be on the constitution. For example, everyone now looking to start to delay the formation of the government. Why is that? Is actually the keeping Sudani as a caretaker prime minister, caretaker government prime minister, at the same time making some sort of food security law, which is that means we're gonna for the prime minister for the governance.
We're gonna have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Ahmed. Thank you to Muhanad Seloom, Ahmed Rushdi, and Kenneth Katzman. Thanks to you too for joining us. You can find more context and analysis on this subject at our website, aljazeera.com. We'd like to know what you think too. Post your comments on our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. Or find us on X. There we are at AJ Inside Story. Until next time, from me, James Bays, and the production team here in Doha, stay safe and well. Bye-bye for now.